And welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. I'm your host, Alex Daniels. Welcome back to the show. We got to kick off the 2026 IndyCar season with the event that always sets the tone, something we're used to, and that's the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the 1.8 mile temporary street circuit there in Florida. And from the very first laps of this weekend to the checkered flag on Sunday, this one delivered in every single way. You had speed, strategy, chaos, heartbreak, and a statement performance from the reigning king of the series. So let's set the stage, right? Morning warm-up on race day gave us our first whiff of what was possible. Pato O'Ward and the Arrow McLaren squad topped the charts, slicing through the street circuit traffic with the fastest lap over a second quicker than many expected. Christian Lundgaard and Nolan Siegel were right there too, proving that despite a tough qualifying session the day before, McLaren did have the pace and balance when it mattered. That session didn't just shake up tires and heat cycles, it hinted at a strategic depth of raw race speed that a lot of teams hadn't shown in qualifying. But let's back it up to that. So when the sun went down on Saturday qualifying, it was Scott McLaughlin who stole the headlines. McLaughlin put his team Penske Chevrolet on the pole with a blistering lap, his third St. Pete pole in 4 seasons, showing his mastery of this circuit's stop and start rhythm. But the grid told us a story of surprises, right? We saw Dennis Hauger, the new IndyCar rookie. He cranked in a stunning third-place qualifying effort in that Dale Coyne machine. Alex Palou, fresh off a dominant championship defense in 2025, qualified 4th, keeping his eyes locked in on race day. And a few big names like Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, and Scott Dixon, they struggled, failing to make the Fast Six and poking questions about strategy and pace headed into Sunday's race. Qualifying ended with tension in the paddock because on street circuits, starting position and tire strategy are everything. So let's talk about the race day. Sunday's race started under the bright Florida skies and almost immediately IndyCar drama unfolded. On lap 1, tragedy struck for newcomer Mick Schumacher, making his much-anticipated IndyCar debut. Caught in the tight chaos at turn 4 involving Stingray Robb and Santino Ferrucci, Schumacher had nowhere to go and was tapped into the wall, ending his weekend before it really began. Thankfully, he walked away after the medical checks, but it was a sobering moment early in the race for everyone on that one. Meanwhile, leaders were already jockeying for an advantage. McLaughlin led early, controlled the race for the first third, but true to form, Alex Palou and the Chip Ganassi racing crew were playing their own chess game. After the first round of pit stops, Palou's strategy, precise tire timing, and smart energy management put him out in front, and from there he simply managed the race like a champion. He led 59 of 100 laps, controlling pace, keeping challengers honest, and stringing together a perfect street course drive. Meanwhile, others were making noise. Christian Lundgaard, starting outside the top 10, methodically carved his way forward and claimed a podium spot. Kyle Kirkwood, another street course ace, ran second late into the race, but faded due to fuel and tire issues, eventually slipping to 4th. And honestly, I thought that we were going to see another Kirkwood win on a street course. But let's talk about Joseph Newgarden for a second, because he fought hard, charging all the way from 23rd to a strong 7th place finish. Super impressive when we know that their program just wasn't right for the weekend. And then you saw the rookies like Dennis Hauger, who started 3rd, showed real promise, finishing in top 10 in his debut, which is great. When the checker flag fell, though, it was Palou in that number 10 DHL Honda with a commanding gap over the field, winning by nearly 13 seconds ahead of McLaughlin, which is just insane. It's the largest margin of victory in St. Pete race history. This was his 20th career IndyCar victory in just 99 starts, and it sends a loud message to the rest of the field. He's here to do it again. He's here to chase a 5th championship. He's here to be one that everyone else has to beat, basically. And if St. Petersburg was any indication, that it's going to be one hell of a season. So, now before we got into the IndyCar season opener, let's rewind a day back to Saturday on the streets of St. Petersburg, where something new, bold, and downright awesome took place. For the first time in history, the only Bulls Green Flag 150 at St. Petersburg was contested on the same downtown streets that IndyCar was set to race, and that alone was reason enough to pay attention because the NASCAR Truck Series were on a tight street course. Nobody quite knew what to expect from that. From the drop of the green, the drama kicked in. Sebring road course ace Ben Rhodes flexed his precision early, winning stage number 1, and showed that some drivers were ready for this unconventional challenge right off the bat. But the story of the day belonged to Lane Riggs, who pulled off one of the most impressive drives of the weekend. Starting all the way back in 28th, Riggs methodically rose through the field, charging past trucks, mastering the tricky surface, and eventually leading to a race-high 41 laps. He took the lead in the second stage, and by the final stint, it was a battle of fuel and nerve on the tight 14-turn road course, street course I should say, not even a road course, but a straight-up street course, with waterfalls and waterfront views all around. Fuel dialed to the edge, and the pack closing in. Riggs saved just enough gas to hold off a hard-charging Ty Majeski by less than a second at the checkered flag. A terrific duel to cap off the first street race in Truck Series history. Behind them, Ben Rhodes rounded out the podium, and Chandler Smith and Caden Huncutt filled out the Ford-heavy top five on a day when passing opportunities were surprisingly good, and the racing stayed wheel-to-wheel more than any skeptic expected it to. And if that weren't cool enough, the race also featured veteran crossover James Hinchcliffe and Dario Franchitti. Hinchcliffe, making a one-off truck start, fought his way into the top 10 despite mid-race contact, reflecting on how much respect he gained for NASCAR regulars over the weekend. And, Dario, a three-time Indy 500 winner, he ran inside the top 10 before mechanical setbacks nudged him back a little bit. But he still walked away thoroughly impressed with the experience. There were some bumps and bruises in more ways than one. Tyler Reif was examined and treated for heat exhaustion after the race. Reminder that cockpit temps on a street course can be very brutal when you're wrestling a stock truck through city turns. By the time Riggs celebrated Victory Lane, donuts swirling through the St. Pete streetscape, fans and drivers alike were buzzing. What many expected to be a novelty turned into one of the most entertaining races the Truck Series has ever seen. The caliber of passing, the pace variation, and the strategy involved made it clear this may not be a one-off, and I really hope it's not. I like this crossover a lot. Fans gathered along the waterfront, the sights and sound of 36 full-fender trucks ripping through that tight technical layout. It was perfect curtain raiser for Sunday's IndyCar main event, and a treat for everyone in the paddock and on the grandstands. All right, let's dig into Saturday at COTA, because we had the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and the race wasn't just a support event, it was a full-on showcase. COTA always feels a little different. The elevation change in turn 1, the blind apexes through the S's, the heavy braking zones that punish even the smallest mistake. It's not your typical stock car playground, and that's exactly why it became one of the most compelling stops on the schedule. From the moment cars hit the track in practice and qualifying, the road course names jumped to the top of the timing sheets. You had Shane Van Gisbergen looking comfortable right away. You can see it in his inputs. Minimal wheel correction, clean exits, late braking that somehow doesn't upset the car. But he wasn't alone, right? We had Connor Zilic, showed serious pace. Austin Hill proved that he's not just an oval guy anymore. Sammy Smith was steady and composed. The field felt much deeper than years past. Not just one ringer versus everyone else, but multiple drivers who understood how to attack this place. Qualifying tightened things up, though, a little bit. The margins were slim. You could tell track position would matter, but at COTA, strategy always has a say as well, and it definitely did. Going into the race, stage 1, the opening stage, measured a lot of aggression. Drivers were careful in the S's, but ruthless in turn 12. We saw dive bomb attempts, some lockups, minor off-track excursions that cost positions, but not just race cars. SVG was patient early. He didn't force it. He let the race come to him. Meanwhile, Zilic made his presence known, leading laps and showing he wasn't intimidated by the veterans. And that's the thing about COTA, it rewards confidence. So stage 1 ended pretty clean, but the intensity was building. The second stage is where things really started to fracture. Pit strategy became a huge factor. Some teams short-pitted to gain the track position. Other teams stayed out to grab the stage points. Austin Hill positioned himself perfectly. He kept the car underneath him and avoided the mistakes that were starting to creep into the field. You could see more drivers pushing hard on the braking zones, trying to maximize time on corner entry. A few overshot turn 1. A few bounced through the runoff. The track was evolving, grips changing, tires falling off. SVG slowly moved forward every lap, another position, no drama, just precision. Then we have to move forward to the restarts. We had a late caution, 5 laps to go, and this is what road racing in NASCAR is about. SVG lined up 6th in the outside lane. Green flag, they rocket up turn 1, up the hill to turn 1. This is where the race flips. SVG sends it deep into the brakes, cleaner than anyone else. He threads between cars, avoids contact, rotates perfectly through the corner, and comes out in contention. Within 2 corners, he's hunting for the lead. By the time they settle into the S's, he's clear, and that's racecraft. That's knowing exactly how much grip you have and trusting it. From there, he manages the gap, no mistakes, no wheel hop, no drama. He takes a checkered flag by less than a second over Austin Hill. You have Sammy Smith coming in clean and opportunistic, rounding out the podium. Zilic rebounded after late trouble and salvaged a solid finish as well. Brent Cruz turned heads for the maturity level that he's got going on with this race. The feel of this race and what made it special wasn't just the chaos, it wasn't the quality, but the braking duels into turn 12, the side-by-side through the stadium section, the way cars danced over the curbs without destructing themselves. COTA exposes a lot for drivers. It demands finesse, aggression, and at the same time, the field is deeper on road courses than it has ever been. So SVG may be the headline, but the bigger story is the next generation is coming up fast, and they're not afraid of these technical tracks. And that's your full breakdown from Saturday at COTA. So now let's talk about Sunday. Cup Series at COTA. This one had weight to it because coming into the weekend, there's a storyline hanging over the garage, and that was momentum, the real momentum, the kind that can shape a season early. From the first practice laps, one thing stood out, and that was Tyler Reddick has speed, and not just single lap speed, long run speed, clean tire management, strong braking stability in turn 12. He looked planted through the S's while others were skating around, and qualifying definitely confirmed it. Reddick put the car on the pole, laying down a lap that wasn't just fast, it was composed. No drama, no heroics, just precision. Behind him, the usual road course threats stacked up. SVG was right there. Christopher Bell looked pretty sharp. The front few rows were filled with drivers who understood COTA as a driver's track. And track position would definitely matter, but this race always finds a way to complicate that, right? So they charge up to the hill in turn 1, stage 1, fanned out 3 to 4 wide. Somehow they all make it through at the beginning. Early laps were intense, but pretty calculated. You could feel drivers testing braking points, feeling out the grip, probing the weaknesses. Reddick set the tone immediately. He didn't just lead, he controlled the pace. Clean exits, no tire abuse. He forced the field to chase him. Behind him, SVG began carving through traffic, smooth on corner entry, aggressive on the exit. He was very methodical, the way elite road racers definitely are. And stage 1 ended with Reddick firmly in control. But as we know, COTA is never really that straightforward. Pit strategy started to split the field. Some teams short-pitted before the stage break. Others gambled on track position. The undercut worked for a few drivers, shuffling the order temporarily. Restarts became super critical. Every restart at COTA feels like a sprint race into turn 1. Drivers willing to break car length deeper than the next guy gained 3 spots instantly. SVG used all of that to his advantage. One restart, he went from mid-pack to inside the top 5 in a single corner, and that was a bold but controlled move. Christopher Bell, he stayed steady all day, no flashy moves, just consistent pace and smart positioning. Further back, we saw the usual road course chaos. You had a missed braking point here, a spin in the hairpin there, a little bump and run through the stadium section, but up front, it was shaping into be a two-man fight. As the laps wound down, it was Reddick versus SVG, two very different styles. Reddick aggressively tidy, comfortably sliding the rear just enough to rotate the car. SVG being ultra precise, maximizing the braking zones and minimizing wheel spin. SVG closed the gap steadily. You could see him hunting with about 10 laps to go. He was within striking distance. Traffic became a factor. One mistake in traffic could flip everything, but Reddick, he didn't even blink. He managed his tires. He hit every apex. He protected the corner exit speed onto the long back straight. And most importantly, he didn't overdrive the car. That's what separates a great drive from a desperate one. SVG took a few looks late, especially in turn 12, but Reddick had enough in his hand to keep it going. When the checker flag waved, Reddick crossed a clear and controlled line, taking that dominant pace to a complete race victory. SVG coming in second, Christopher Bell coming in third, rounding out the podium. A mix of road course specialists and championship contenders rounded out the top 10. But the bigger picture wasn't just to win, it was a statement. Winning at COTA requires patience, braking discipline, tire management, and confidence over blind crests. It's not luck, it's execution. Reddick didn't steal the race, he definitely earned it. And SVG proved once again he's one of the most dangerous road racers in the field. Every time the series turns right and left, he's going to be in the conversation. And we saw a masterclass from all these drivers. But let's talk about the fact that we now have Reddick as undefeated for the season. 3 races in, 3 in a row. Something that hasn't been done in the recent history books. I think it's been since the 1950s when this happened. It's just crazy. So it's exciting going into Phoenix where anything can happen, and we'll see, who shakes out to be the best there. We've got the doubleheader with IndyCar on Saturday, Cup Series on Sunday. It's going to be awesome. Definitely keep tuned into that, and we'll see if Reddick continues to make history. All right, before we move forward any further, Let's look across the globe a little bit because the Formula One season is about to kick off in Melbourne. The 2026 championship is shaping up to be one of the most fascinating seasons we've seen in some years. We've got regulation changes coming next year, teams pushing the limits of the current year, and a grid that's tighter than it has been in a long time. So let's run through the field real quick and talk about what to expect from each team as we head into the season opener at Albert Park. We're just going to touch on each team real quick and what we think, maybe a couple little predictions here and there. But let's kick it off with the reigning powerhouse of Red Bull Racing. Red Bull enters the season still carrying enormous momentum. Even with the field getting closer, they've mastered this generation of car better than anyone. If the car is anywhere near what they had last year, they're still going to be the benchmark. The big question is consistency across the second seat. If both drivers are scoring regularly, Red Bull could once again control the championship narrative early in the season. Prediction for them, they win races early and remain the team everyone else is chasing, right? Pretty easy prediction there. So let's talk about Ferrari. Ferrari might be the most intriguing team on the grid right now. They've shown some flashes of incredible pace over the past couple of seasons, but execution has always been the Achilles heel, right? Strategy mistakes, reliability issues, and weekends where the car just doesn't show up. The raw speed is there. We saw this in testing. If they clean up the operational side of the team, Ferrari could be a legitimate championship contender again. And the Tifosi are desperate for it. So Ferrari wins multiple races this year and stays in the title fight deeper into the year than we've seen in recent history. That's the prediction. I think they've got the technology lined out. They've got Lewis Hamilton hungrier than ever. He's got to prove something. I think they get a couple race wins this year as well. Moving over to Mercedes, they've been on a long road back since the ground effect era started. They've made progress each season, but the question remains, have they finally solved the core performance issues? The team's engineering depth is still one of the strongest in the paddock, and if the development path is correct this year, they could reinsert themselves into a fight for the front. Mercedes becomes a regular podium contender. That's my prediction. They sneak in a couple race wins. They're not going to challenge for a championship, but I do think they'll be in the talking points, right? That's my guess anyway. They logged more laps than anyone else, I believe, in testing. They're trying to do the research. They're trying to get the reliability, the consistency. I think we're going to see a lot of podiums out of them this year. Okay, McLaren. They might be the team with the most momentum heading into the season. Their development curve over the past years has been super steep, and they've proven they can build a car to last on multiple types of circuits. The big test now is going to be consistency. Can they compete every weekend, not just on their strong tracks? If they do, McLaren becomes a real threat to race wins and maybe even more. McLaren's going to score multiple wins this year. It's going to become a genuine spoiler in the championship battle. Once again, that's the prediction, right? Momentum continues for McLaren. That's the title story here. This puts us into Aston Martin. That continues to be one of the most ambitious projects in Formula One. They've invested heavily in facilities, personnel, long-term development, but translating that investment into consistent performance hasn't always been straightforward. This season will tell us a lot when the team is ready to move into the front group permanently, right? So prediction is Aston Martin stays competitive in the midfield with an occasional podium opportunity. Maybe we'll see a little bit out of them, maybe we won't. It's hard to say, but I feel like long-term is where they're at. Let's talk about Alpine. This is a team that feels like it's always on the verge of something. They've shown flashes of speed, but overall performance has been inconsistent. Reliability and internal direction have also been question marks in recent years. If they can stabilize the program and deliver a strong car, Alpine could easily fight for upper midfield. My prediction, Alpine finishes comfortably in the points most weekends, but struggles to reach the podiums. We're talking position 5 through 10 for them on most racetracks. This leads us over to the former AlphaTauri squad, the Visa Cash App Red Bull Formula One team, or whatever the crap it's called now. They continue to evolve under a new identity. They remain closely tied to Red Bull's technical ecosystem, which means they often punch above their weight class when the car development actually lines up. This team has a habit of surprising people at certain tracks, so prediction for them, expect a few standout qualifying performances and an occasional top 5 finish, but other than that, they're just going to be sitting in the points but not in the podium. So this brings us to Williams, who has quietly been rebuilding. The team has stabilized financially, improved the infrastructure, and began climbing out of the backmarker role that plagued them for years. They're not title contenders, but they are moving in the right direction. Prediction for Williams is they will continue its upward trend and regularly fight for points in the midfield. Pretty easy bar to set for them. most weekends. We'll see if they can live up to that. Sauber is our next one here, and it's in a transitional phase as they prepare for the future arrival of Audi. That means the season is partly about development, partly about laying the groundwork for what comes next. They'll likely have strong weekends and quiet ones depending on circuit characteristics. Prediction, a handful of points and finishes, but a season focused on long-term growth. This leads us to Haas. Haas tends to be one of the more unpredictable teams in Formula One, in my opinion. Some weekends they look like midfield fighters. Others they struggle with wear and race pace. Their goal this year is simple: consistency. If they can keep the car inside the points fight more often, that would be a big step forward for them. My prediction is Haas grabs more points on several occasions but remains on the edge of the midfield. So here's some big predictions for 2026 from us. Before we head to Melbourne, let's throw a couple out. The champion fight goes down to the final few races again. The field is closer than it's been in years. The development across the grid is tightening performance gaps. I think that's what it's going to be. McLaren wins more than one race this season. Super easy to predict that, right? With their trajectory suggests that they're ready to convert all these paces into more victories. But I do think we're going to see at least one surprise podium from a midfield team with strategy, weather, safety cars playing a role, whatever. But somebody outside the big four will steal a podium this year for sure. Also, very, very simple predictions. Nothing too crazy there. Now, before we wrap up this Formula One prediction, we've got to talk about the biggest story of the year. That's Cadillac. Backed by General Motors and originally launched through the Andretti bid, the Cadillac project is officially joining the Formula One grid. So here's what we should expect. The Cadillac effort that started by Andretti Global in the bid to join Formula One years ago, for a while it looked like it might stall out, but here's what they're going to bring, right? They're going to bring some solid infrastructure. They're going to be bringing on a team of good engineers, a lot of depth. They've got the facilities and the talent pool aimed at competing long-term rather than filling the grid spot. But let's be realistic. What kind of expectations should we expect out of them? They rarely show up and win right out of the gate in Formula One. Any new team struggles, right? Even well-funded programs usually spend a few seasons trying to learn the systems, build their pipelines for data, figure out development cycles, all that stuff. So if Cadillac can build the program correctly with strong leadership, good engineering hires, and patience, they could really become a legitimate midfield contender by season's end. They do have some good drivers, but honestly, my prediction is they're probably going to struggle a little bit for the first season. That's normal stuff, though. But by the time the next major regulation cycle sets in, they could be one of the most interesting teams on the grid because General Motors commits fully to Formula One. They're not doing it just to participate. That's going to be a win. And honestly, this is a win for America as well. For decades, Americans have dreamed about a true U.S. manufacturer stepping into Formula One with serious backing. Now it's happening. Cadillac's here. When they roll onto the grid, it's going to mark the beginning of a whole new chapter for the sport, for those American fans. So we're excited to see it. I hope it goes well. We'll find out in a couple days' time. All right, we're going to touch on a news story real quick again. This JGR versus Gabehart lawsuit. Just a quick update. This is the week's biggest off-track story. It's not about lap times, pit strategy, but it's about the contracts, leadership, and increasingly competitive fight for talent inside the garage. We already kind of touched on a little bit, but Joe Gibbs Racing has filed a lawsuit against former longtime competition director and former championship-winning crew chief, Mr. Chris Gabehart. This isn't just a minor dispute. It centers around contract terms, non-compete language, and alleged interference tied to Spire Motorsports. So let's unpack this carefully, right? Chris Gabehart isn't just another name in the pit box. He was a crew chief behind Denny Hamlin's 2019 Daytona 500 win. He helped elevate JGR's competition program. He later moved into a leadership role overseeing broader performance operations. He wasn't just turning wrenches, he was shaping competitive direction for an entire team. So when someone like that moves, it definitely matters. So here's what JGR is alleging. At the center of the lawsuit, there are three core claims. 1, breach of contract. JGR alleges that Gabehart violated terms of his employment agreement. 2, a non-compete violation. They claim his move conflicts with regulations designed to protect proprietary data and competitive advantage. Notorious interference. This is where Spire enters the conversation. JGR is alleging that Spire Motorsports knowingly encouraged or facilitated actions that violated Gabehart's contract. The last one really escalate things because now this isn't just an employee dispute, it becomes a team to team legal fight. So why is this bigger than one person? Well, let's zoom out just a little bit. The NASCAR garage has become more competitive than ever when it comes to technical talent. You've got crew chiefs, aero specialists, simulation engineers, competition directors. These are all assets to the team. Spire Motorsports in particular has been aggressive in its growth strategy over the last few years. They've expanded resources, invested heavily in infrastructure, and positioned themselves to be more than just a mid-tier operation. If Gabe Hart was seen as a foundational hire, someone would accelerate Spire's performance, you can understand why JGR would want to protect their intellectual capital, right? This is Formula One style tension creeping into NASCAR. So what's really at stake? Well, this isn't just about the contract. It's about access to data models, simulation tools, setup notebooks, organizational philosophy, competing, forecasting. I mean, modern NASCAR isn't just mechanical grip or feel anymore. It's all about engineering ecosystems. JGR believes the proprietary information could be moved with high-level executives like Gabe Hart. They're going to act aggressively. So how does Spire actually even fit into this equation? Well, Spire Motorsports has been quietly building something serious. They've expanded to multiple full-time entries. They've invested in facilities. They've calculated personnel moves. And they brought over Gabe Hart. So if Gabe Hart was part of the strategic rebuild or competitive elevation plan, this lawsuit could temporarily complicate that timeline. So here's a key questions. Did Spire knowingly interfere with the contract? That's what the legal system is going to sort out, right? Until a ruling or settlement happens, it's allegation versus defense. Inside the garage, reactions are quite mixed. Some see it as a standard of business. Others view it as a natural evolution of a more professional corporate NASCAR. This isn't a handshake deal era anymore. Teams are protecting intellectual property like tech companies because that's essentially what they are now. So what happens next? Well, there's a few paths. You could see the settlement behind closed doors. There could be an injunction limiting Gabe Hart's role temporarily. You could get full court proceedings or contract restructuring that allows movement with restrictions. Most disputes like this never fully reach trial. They resolve quietly, but the message is clear. Top teams are no longer willing to lose high-level personnel without a fight. So why should fans care about this? Well, you might be thinking this is legal stuff. Why does it matter to me, right? Well, it matters because leadership shapes performance. If Spire lands key executives, it accelerates very quickly. If JGR protects its competitive structure, it preserves its edge in the series. This lawsuit is about the balance of power in the Cup Series more than anything. And when balance shifts, championships shift. So honestly, our final thought for this one is we're watching the NASCAR evolution in real time. Bigger budgets, corporate contracts, aggressive talent acquisition, legal protections that look more like a Silicon Valley than a short track racing America. And whether this resolves quickly or drags out, one thing is definitely certain. The competition isn't just happening on Sundays anymore. It's happening in the boardrooms, not at the racetracks. And that's honestly the most we've got out of this right now. So that's your deep dive into the JGR Gabe Hart Spire situation. We'll keep watching it closely. As always as well, we're going to cut it a little short this week. We got a lot of race stuff coming up. We wanted to make sure we touched on all that. We're going to try to get a guest on the show next week. We'll see how that goes. We're going to hit you with some more history coming up in further episodes, so don't think we forgot about the true name over here at Historic Hot Laps. But please like, share, subscribe, hit us up on the socials, all the good stuff. You guys know what to do. We appreciate the listens. We appreciate the fandom we've got here. It's awesome. We wouldn't be this far into these episodes without you guys. So appreciate it. Please tell a friend who's into auto racing as well, historians, whatever it may be. But until next time, we'll recap all the racing and Formula One weekend is coming up as well. So we got NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, all that good stuff coming up. We'll cover it all. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in.